what should be considered a successful season in Columbia, South Carolina, year in, year out? I think that's a legitimate question. I've talked to numerous people that are very familiar with the South Carolina program, that have worked there, just have some roots there. What is a consistent year-to-year expectation from the South Carolina Gamecock fan base? I have a feel, but it's interesting. I don't know if we've ever really defined that. I mean, Steve Spurrier didn't start winning 9+ games consistently until year 6, and then he ran it off 3 or 4 years in a row. I know different era, but I'm just stating facts here. But nonetheless, I think this season defined the Shane Beamer tenure in Columbia. I'm your host, Dave Shumate, coming at you from the SEC Unfiltered platform. But first, before we get to this segment, go to RHOBACK.com and use code SECU for 20% off your first purchase. Guys, like I mentioned last week, we already have some game times announced. If you're going to that Florida-Miami game on Labor Day weekend, 3:30 Eastern kickoff, it's going to be hot. You need to get your polos. You need to get your Gator polos that will allow you to breathe in the swamp. It's going to be really hot. It's going to be humid. Any of these times. I mean, if you're going to the Clemson, Georgia game, walking around Atlanta, outside of Mercedes-Benz around noon, just before, afterwards, after the game. It's going to be hot. So dress accordingly. Our guys at RHOBACK do a phenomenal job. Again, go to RHOBACK.com. Use code SECU for a 20% off your first purchase. I promise you, you are not going to regret it. But a big year for me, at least me personally, how I judge Shane Beamer. I have kind of a thought on what I think about Shane Beamer and kind of where I'm leaning to heading into year 4. But this year's gonna have a big impact. I feel like it's gonna be the big, hey, we've all seen the gladiator scene. Hey, yay or nay. I think this year's gonna do it for me. The 2024 campaign inherited a tough situation. I think Will Muschamp and them recruited well on the defensive side of the ball. On the defensive side of the ball, left a lot to be desired on the offensive side of the ball, especially at the quarterback position. Shane Beamer took over right after the 2020 COVID season. The 21 class was just a total black hole. I think it finished the worst in the SEC. Forget its national ranking. It wasn't good. Let's just put it that way. It was not good. One of the worst recruiting classes I can remember. But it was just kind of wasn't really Shane Beamer's fault. Got there right after the COVID season, no contact period. It was tough to kind of get out and kind of fill your team. So again, I give him a little bit of the benefit of doubt just because we were in the middle of a pandemic. But let's go over a few things outside of the win total, black and white win total that I'll give you at the very end. We're reviewing the schedule. Now let's go over some things if I'm a South Carolina fan, when I'm considering what would be a successful season for the Gamecocks in 2024. These are some things I'd like to see as well outside of a black and white win total. For me, it's dictated on how the team handles adversity, just their preparedness, staff's ability to adapt on game day. I feel like that's something that's been a struggle for Shane Beamer. To me, it's a little bit more nuanced than just the record. I see this as a year where the roster is trending in the right direction for Beamer, but still not good enough to be better than 7 wins due to the competition and who you're playing. We'll pull up the schedule here in a bit. My questions are mainly around the in-game coaching, though, and Beamer and these guys that he's hired, which I'm not overly thrilled about wasn't at the time when he hired them in 21. These guys got to show they'd be able to consistently live up to their job expectations on a game day basis for at least guaranteed 12 Saturdays of the year in the fall. I think that's been it's left a little bit to be desired on the recruiting trail as well, but not specifically. I'm not specifically talking about that here. I'm talking about game day responsibilities. You need to get away from the Florida game last year specifically comes up when he starts trying to slow down the offense in the third quarter. It's like we overthink stuff at times for Shane Beamer. So I want to see him develop as a head coach. What does the game day responsibilities look like outside of the CEO mindset he's kind of taken? I feel like South Carolina leaves a lot to be desired from a penalty standpoint, from a discipline standpoint, just overall game day decisions. I would like that to be improved. This is the first segment I've done. We got 5 left. I mean, we're going in alphabetical order, so we're on the S's, obviously, with South Carolina. That I brought that up, like, hey, I want to see kind of the game day, like, decision-making from a coaching standpoint be better. I mean, across the board, offense, defense, special teams, and I think Shane Beamer would agree. And then before we get to the record, offensive line has to be improved. Remember, Sean Elliott coming back. He'd been the head coach at Georgia State in Atlanta since 2017. He's back as the offensive line coach, left his role as the head coach at Georgia State. Now he's back in Columbia. He has a big responsibility here because this offensive line has really struggled. Really, Shane Beamer's been there for a lot of different reasons. I think who Will Muschamp and that staff recruited. I think injuries tons of injuries. A little bit unlucky, to be honest with you. But I like some of the young guys they personally brought in. Tree Babalade, I think, is an outstanding player. I think Trevon Ball, he's another young cat. I think they have some guys they've brought in that they kind of projected and they've developed a little bit. And you've seen some flashes, but now it's time to take it to the next level. I think Sean Elliott's a fantastic offensive line coach. He hadn't been just a position coach in a while. I think he wanted to get back to his roots of, hey, coaching, developing, instead of, hey, you see some of these group of 5 coaches now. Kane Womack, DC at Alabama now. Maurice Lindquist at Alabama, the DB's coach who was the head coach at Buffalo. These guys want to get back into Power 5 and just coaching football. What they got into it for. Chip Kelly, an prime example, is now leaving his spot at UCLA and now be the OC at Ohio State. But again, I think the offensive line is going to be improved. I like Sean Elliott, like I mentioned. They get 2 key core guys in Babalade and Ball. I think you have some guys there. It's time. This doesn't have to be the Joe Moore Award winner. Don't get me wrong here. This has to be a unit. It's just improved enough to protect Lenore Sellers for him to have the time to make plays. And I think they can play a little more comfortable this year because I think he's going to be able to make plays with his legs to help this offense out. That's something they hadn't had in a while. And I think Spencer Rattler had some of that last year. Spencer Rattler had a hell of a year. The best year no one talked about. He was one of the few bright spots on this South Carolina team last year. But I think there's some things to work with on the offensive line. If they can stay healthy, Sean Elliott developing even more. But let's go to it. Black and white record-wise, I told you we would do this. Let's go right to it. There we go. Opening up with Old Dominion. Got to get a W here. They got 3 automatic dubs they should have. Really 4, if you want to be honest. We'll go through it in chronological order. But Old Dominion at Kentucky, LSU at home, Akron bye week, Ole Miss at home, at Alabama, at Oklahoma, bye week, Texas A&M at home, at Vanderbilt, Missouri at home, Wofford at home, at Clemson. I see 4 wins you got to have. Old Dominion, Akron, Vandy, and Wofford. 4. So we're right there at 4. I think the biggest game of the year, and I think it's the biggest game of the year for Kentucky as well, is at Kentucky, September 7th. I think this is a massive, massive game for South Carolina right here. Massive game. Tone setter for both teams here. Conference opener has to – I think both teams need this win. It's not a must-have because it's so early in the year, September 7th. But I just can't see South Carolina fulfilling a successful season, which I'm going to give you a number here in a minute, if they don't win this game. Same with Kentucky. I think same could go with Kentucky. LSU at home. I'm not as high on LSU as a lot of teams are. Or a lot of people are. It's at home. LSU's still better on paper. That LSU defense has me interested. But I feel like how that Kentucky game plays out is going to have a big determining factor on South Carolina's mindset heading into that September 14th matchup against LSU. I mentioned Akron. That should be a win. They get a bye week before Ole Miss, who everybody's putting that ink, letting that dry, that Ole Miss is going to be in the 2024 college football playoff. As it gets closer, I'm starting to believe it because they're starting to add more depth. I think that's going to be a tough game. At Alabama speaks for itself. That's going to be tough. At Oklahoma, it's going to be tough. These three right here, October 5th through October 19th, Ole Miss at Alabama and at Oklahoma, that'd be tough. It's going to be tough. I'd be shocked if they got any of those 3. If we want to start getting into where I see success, this A&M game at home at Willie B is probably going to have to end up being a win. I'm not saying it is. I think it's going to have to. I mentioned Vanderbilt, one of the 4 they need to have. Can they end the streak against Eli Drinkwitz in Missouri? Shane Beamer's never beaten them. It's at home. Battle of the Mayor's Cup trophy. South Carolina's never won that game. Can they end that streak? I think Missouri's just going to be better than South Carolina this year. So I wouldn't be overly confident in that one either. And then and I mentioned Wofford. That's a win. That's 4. And then at Clemson, woo! I see 4 wins, and you're going to have to go win 2 of at Kentucky, LSU, Ole Miss, at Alabama, at Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Missouri, and at Clemson to get to 6. And this is where I'm at here. I don't think 6 is a successful season in year 4. No, it's not. I understand the schedule is what it is. It's the SEC. You've added Texas and Oklahoma. Shane Beamer goes back to Memorial Stadium where he coached tight ends for a couple of years. They play Oklahoma this year, as you can see on the schedule right there on October 19th. I know the schedule is difficult, but if I'm in year 4, they've recruited well enough and developed some guys. I don't think things are all bad, but it's a tough schedule. I would say a successful season for South Carolina here, and it's going to be tough to do. But I can't say, like I've mentioned before, like Mississippi State, I can't say a 5-win season, even if the offense looks good, is a successful season. I can't say a losing record, or even, to my point here, a 500 season is a successful season. I can't say that. I can't say that. So I have to go 7-5, and it's year 4. Got to factor that in. But I don't know if they get 3 of those games. That's tough. I can't give them any of these wins. Ole Miss at home, at Alabama, at Oklahoma. So really, I think you're going to have to go get A&M at home and probably Missouri at home. I mean, Shane Beamer traditionally has not played well on the road either. I mean, that's why this at Kentucky game's massive. I think for them to get to 7, they're going to have to win this game. This is a must-win if they want to get to 7. I'm not going to say 6. I think it's going to be a must-win if they want to get to 7. That Kentucky game, that's the one you need to circle if you're an A&M fan. I'm sorry, if you're a South Carolina fan, you need to circle this Kentucky Wildcat game here. And I think it's the same if you're a Kentucky fan. I know you're probably not watching this, but I think this is a big week 2 matchup in this league. It's going to set the tone for both teams here. But I'm going to stop sharing, go back. So I just wanted to kind of touch briefly on that. I think going into year 4, I haven't really made my decision on how I feel about Shane Beamer yet. I really don't. But this is good. This 2024 campaign going into his 4th year is going to tell the tale for me. It is. It is. So, but I think it's a tough schedule. But I think what would be a successful season for South Carolina? I think it's, hey, can the game day management, just like the whole game day operation, discipline, let's get the penalties away. Let's take away the dumb plays. Can that improve in year 4? It should. I'd be looking for that if I was a South Carolina fan. And can the offensive line improve with Sean Elliott coming back with a couple of young key guys that I like that they signed? I'm going to give them that. And then can you get to 7 wins? I think you got to get to 7. Like I mentioned, I can't say a 500, 6-6 record success. And this segment is what would define success for South Carolina in 2024 heading into Shane Beamer's 4th season. I think it's got to be 7-5, game day improvement, offensive line is improved. And I think all that goes hand in hand. If they win 7 games, the offensive line is going to be improved. If they win 7 games, the game day management, Shane Beamer becoming being more comfortable in that head role of 12 weeks out of the year in the fall. He got more comfortable in those shoes. I think that all goes hand in hand there. But just wanted to talk about it. What would be a successful season for Shane Beamer and South Carolina heading to year 4? I gave it to you 7-5, 7-5, and those key aspects that I mentioned. If I was a South Carolina fan, I'd be looking forward to. I appreciate your patience for me with this segment. We're moving around here. Sorry if it echoed a little bit, but I'm still going to get you this content that we give you daily at the SEC Unfiltered channel platform. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all of it. It's SEC content 24/7, 365. We got the SEC tournament coming up in Hoover this week. Harrison Fant, my guy Chris Phillips, going to give it to you all week. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. You don't want to miss any of this. You have a phenomenal day.